Some doors are meant to stay closed, but what if the only way out is through? It begins with a door. Just a simple door, wooden, unremarkable, standing at the end of a forgotten hallway. A door like any other, except this one has never been opened. Not in decades. Not by those who lived here. Not even by those who tried. Some say it was locked from the inside. Others say there was never a key. But those who have stood before it swear they heard something. A sound. A whisper. A warning. At first no one paid attention. The house itself had its own history, its own tragedies, its own reasons to be left alone. Stories faded, names were forgotten, and in time even the fear turned into nothing more than a lingering memory. But memories have a way of finding their way back. And then, the door opened. Tonight we tell the story of the last door you will ever open, and the horrors waiting behind it. Imagine standing at the edge of a forgotten road. No sign of life for miles. The land stretches out in every direction, empty and desolate, as if the earth itself has been abandoned. The sky is heavy, gray, almost as if the sun itself has given up its fight to shine through. The air is thick with the scent of wet leaves, the damp, musty smell of something that has long been left untouched. This is where we begin our story. A place cut off from the world, lost to time. A forgotten estate, tucked away in the heart of the countryside, its walls whispering stories of loss, of madness, and of a secret that no one has dared to uncover. It's late autumn, the season when nature itself seems to pull away from the light. The trees are skeletal, their bare branches clawing at the gray sky. A thin mist rolls in, curling like fingers across the ground, swallowing up the decaying remnants of what once was. This house, this place, feels wrong in ways that can't easily be explained. The windows are cracked, the walls are stained with the remnants of something old and unidentifiable. The lights flicker on their own, casting shadows in corners that should remain empty. Doors creak open and shut, though no one is there to open them. And the floors, they groan beneath every footstep as if the house itself is trying to tell you something it's not ready to reveal. For years no one dared step foot inside. The house had become a relic, a symbol of madness. It was once the home of an artist, a man consumed by his obsession with capturing true horror in his paintings. He was reclusive, never seen without his easel, his canvas, his strange, terrifying images that seemed to reach out of the frame and pull the viewer in. He vanished without a trace, leaving only his work behind. But there was something else he left behind, something that no one could explain. A room. A locked room hidden in the deepest part of the house. No key. No way to open it. No one who ever tried succeeded. And as the years passed, the rumors surrounding that room only grew darker. Some say the room is empty. Others claim it holds something no one should ever see. But the truth is no one knows for certain. And for decades the house has remained untouched. Until now. In every story there's someone who seeks the truth. Someone who refuses to accept that some mysteries are meant to remain hidden. Someone who believes that logic and reason can solve even the most impossible of puzzles. For Sarah Monroe, the search for answers has been a lifelong journey. A journalist by trade, Sarah had always been a skeptic. Raised on reason, facts, and the belief that everything, even the supernatural, could be explained with enough digging. It was this very mindset that led her to uncover countless urban legends, each one more outlandish than the last. Yet, despite all her efforts to debunk them, there was always something unsettling. An undercurrent that refused to be dismissed. Still, she remained steadfast in her skepticism, believing that the truth was out there, waiting to be uncovered with logic, research, and cold, hard evidence. But there was one legend she couldn't shake, the one that had haunted her since childhood. The disappearance of her older brother, Daniel. At the age of 10, Sarah's brother vanished without a trace. It was the day they moved into a new house, a house much like the one she now stood before. Daniel had been drawn to a locked door in the hallway, an old door that no one could explain. It had been sealed for years, yet it called to him. And the last time Sarah saw him, he was standing in front of that very door, his hand resting on the cold wood, just before he disappeared, never to be seen again. No one ever found him. No trace. No sign. Just an empty space where he had once been and a room that remained locked. For Sarah, it was a wound that never healed, a question that never found an answer. Her search for answers consumed her, turning her life into a relentless pursuit. Over the years, Sarah had uncovered countless theories, some logical, some outrageous, but none that offered any real closure. Yet, despite all the dead ends, one thing had always remained clear. The locked door in her childhood home had held the key to whatever had happened to her brother. She had to know what lay behind it. This quest brought Sarah to the house she now stood in front of, the same house that had once been home to the reclusive artist. The very same place where the door that had trapped her brother's fate still stood, untouched by time. But Sarah was not alone in her pursuit. Her cameraman, David, had been with her for years, always by her side, capturing every moment. He was the believer, the one who had always kept his thoughts to himself, his belief in the supernatural too personal to share. While Sarah dismissed the strange occurrences they encountered, David would catch glimpses of something just out of sight. A flicker in the corner of his eye, a shadow that didn't belong. And yet, despite his silent unease, David continued to follow Sarah. Because deep down he knew something wasn't right. And then there was Mrs. Calloway, the local historian. She was the one who had warned Sarah about the house's curse, a woman who had lived in the area long before Sarah was even born. Mrs. Calloway had seen the house's dark history firsthand. She had witnessed the disappearances, the madness, the unexplained deaths. And when Sarah arrived asking questions, Mrs. Calloway's warning was clear. "There are some things you cannot control," she had told Sarah, her eyes wide with something between fear and regret. "Some doors, they are meant to stay closed. And some things, they are best left untouched." But Sarah was never one to take the easy answer. Her brother's disappearance, her obsession with uncovering the truth, these were not things she could walk away from. So she stepped forward, determined to find the answers, no matter the cost. As Sarah stepped deeper into the house, the weight of its silence pressed in around her. The air, thick with neglect, hung heavy, almost as if the very walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting. Her every step seemed to disturb the stillness, but nothing could prepare her for what she would find next. The first sign was subtle, an odd chill that seemed to crawl over her skin. At first, she dismissed it, thinking it was nothing more than the autumn air creeping through the cracks in the house. But then she saw it. The door. It stood at the end of the hallway just as it always had. Locked. Still. The wood darkened with age, the metal handle tarnished with years of disuse. But there was something different about it now. The air around it felt colder than the rest of the house. Not just colder, icy. As though the door itself had absorbed the cold of some forgotten past, holding it in place for all these years, waiting. Sarah reached for the handle, her fingers brushing against the cold metal. It was jarring. A shock to her senses. The temperature around the door was nothing like the rest of the house. No draft. No reason for it to be this cold. She stepped back, puzzled. David, ever the skeptic, lifted his camera to document the moment. But as the lens focused on the door, something happened. The camera malfunctioned. The screen flickered, distorted, and then went black. David cursed under his breath, tapping the side of the camera trying to get it to work. But every time it pointed at the door, it froze. Nothing would record. It was as if the camera was unwilling to capture whatever lay behind it. The air felt thick, oppressive, as though the house itself were warning them to turn back. And then they heard it. Faint at first, barely audible over the creaking of the old house. A knock. A soft, deliberate sound. Coming from behind the door. No one else was in the house. No one had been there for years. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as she glanced at David, but he was already backing away, his face pale, his hands still gripping the camera in disbelief. The knocking came again, this time louder. A steady rhythm, as if something, or someone, was trying to get out. But there was no one there. No one to answer the door. And yet the sound persisted. It was coming from somewhere deep within the walls, reverberating through the house like an ancient echo. It was almost as though it was alive. Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was waiting for them. Something that had been waiting for years to be uncovered. As they moved deeper into the house, the signs of something darker began to reveal themselves. Symbols. Strange, arcane symbols etched into the walls. Not just one or two, but dozens of symbols that looked almost familiar. As Sarah leaned closer, her blood ran cold. They matched the markings she had seen in old police files. Symbols that had appeared near the locations of missing persons. Cases that had been left unresolved. Cold cases, forgotten, buried in time. And then there was the painting. It was hanging in the room at the end of the hall, partially covered by a heavy, decaying curtain. Sarah barely noticed it at first, but then she felt the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. She moved closer, her heart racing as she looked at the grotesque scene before her. A portrait. Of her brother. Daniel. But this wasn't just any painting. It was him, standing in the very clothes he had worn the night he vanished, staring back at her with an expression frozen in time. The image was distorted, twisted in a way that made it look wrong. His face, pale and drained of life, eyes wide with something she couldn't quite place. The expression was not fear. It was something worse. Something otherworldly. And that's when it happened. The whispers. At first, they were faint, like a rustling of leaves in the distance. But now they were everywhere. In the air. In the walls. In her mind. Open it. The words came clear as day, though no one had spoken them aloud. They were there, crawling through the air like a disease, getting louder with each passing second. The door. The locked door. It was calling to her. Sarah stood frozen. The room was closing in on her. David's camera had malfunctioned once again. No matter how hard they tried, they could not escape the oppressive feeling that something was waiting just behind that door. Something that had been waiting for years. And now the time had come. The house had been quiet for so long, but as Sarah reached for the handle, the air itself seemed to hold its breath. Time felt suspended as if the universe were waiting, watching. And then it happened. The door opened. Not with a creak or a groan, but with an unnatural smoothness as though it had been waiting for them. The heavy wood groaned once, but the pressure was gone before it even registered. The coldness in the air thickened, pressing against Sarah's chest as she crossed the threshold. Inside there was no immediate horror. No monsters. No shadows that leaped from the corners of the room. Instead the room was too familiar. Too perfect. Like a replica of the house they had just entered. But the moment Sarah stepped into the room she felt it. The weight of the silence. Too heavy, too thick, like it was pressing against her. The air felt stagnant as if the space itself had been sealed off from time. She turned, expecting to find David behind her, but something was wrong. His reflection, her reflection, stood still, frozen in the dusty mirror across the room, but neither of them moved. They were trapped in a frame, stuck in a world where even the glass refused to breathe. Sarah turned to speak to David, her voice shaky, but the words caught in her throat as she realized he was gone. Vanished. Just like that. No warning, no scream. One moment he was there, the next he had disappeared into the walls. She called out, but her voice echoed back at her, hollow and dead. David was nowhere to be found. The walls. The paintings. They were all wrong now. At first it was subtle, a shift in the colors. A hue too red, too dark. But as Sarah stepped further into the room, her heart began to pound. The paintings on the walls weren't of landscapes or abstract designs anymore. No, they were of her. Of her. Each one showed a different version of her. In one, her eyes were hollow, her face twisted in a grotesque smile. In another, her body was stretched, distorted in ways that seemed impossible, each piece more monstrous than the last. The worst one was a painting of Sarah standing in front of the locked door. But this time it wasn't the door that was locked. It was her. Trapped. Frozen in time. And then it hit her. The realization, cold and sharp, gripped her chest like an iron vice. This place, this house, wasn't haunted. It wasn't trying to scare her, wasn't trying to kill her. It was hungry. The house, this thing they had stepped into, was feeding on them. On their memories. On their fears. It didn't need to kill. It didn't need to haunt. It simply consumed. The mirror, it wasn't just a reflection. It wasn't a door leading to another world. No, it was a prison. A time loop. A never-ending cycle of moments, of lost lives, where every person who entered became a part of it, trapped in a place where the walls closed in tighter with each passing second. And Sarah. Sarah was now one of them. The door wasn't just a door, it was a gateway. A portal. And the house had lured her in, just as it had lured every soul before her. The worst part? She realized too late that the house wasn't just trying to trap her, it was trying to make her one of its paintings. To be frozen in time forever, a memory of a life that once was. As Sarah's breath quickened, her pulse pounding in her ears, she understood the true horror. There was no escape. The house had already consumed David and soon, it would claim her too. In the moments following the disappearance of David, Sarah had thought she could escape. She had to, she needed to. The walls of the house had begun to close in around her, tightening with each passing second. Every step she took felt heavier, more suffocating. But escape, it seemed, was not a choice she would be granted. The first thing she saw when she turned the corner was the television. A relic of a time long past, covered in dust and grime. The static was relentless, an eerie hum that seemed to rattle the very bones of the house. Sarah approached it slowly, her heart hammering in her chest, knowing she didn't want to see what she was about to see. David's face appeared on the screen. But there was something wrong, something she couldn't place at first. He was filming. The room behind him was familiar, but there was no sign of Sarah. No sign of herself. She watched in horror as the camera zoomed out, revealing the house. But it was empty. The same empty house she had been wandering through. And then the shot lingered on the door. The one she had opened. The one that had led them into the reflection. As the camera swung back to David, his face twisted in confusion. "Sarah?" he called, but the words sounded hollow, distant. The TV flickered again, and when it cleared, David was gone. Frantic, Sarah turned and sprinted down the hallway, her breath shallow, her hands shaking. She had to find a way out. She had to get back to the door that led to the real world. She found it just as she had left it, the locked door. The very door that had once been a barrier, a promise of escape. But when she flung it open, her heart sank. There was no hallway. No daylight streaming through. There was only darkness, an impenetrable blackness that swallowed everything. Her breath caught in her throat as the door slammed shut behind her, sealing her inside once again. And then, she heard it. A voice. Soft at first, so faint that she wasn't sure if she had imagined it. "I told you not to open it." She turned. Slowly. Tentatively. Her pulse raced as she caught a glimpse of something in the shadows. A small figure. A child's figure. No, it couldn't be. She couldn't breathe, couldn't move as the figure stepped forward, emerging from the darkness, her younger self. A reflection of the past, a haunting reminder of a time long gone. The young Sarah's eyes were wide, filled with sorrow, and something darker, something older than the child standing before her. Her lips trembled as she whispered again, the words hanging heavy in the air. "I told you not to open it." Before Sarah could speak, before she could react, the door slammed shut. The sound reverberated through her chest, a force that felt as though it had locked her in a tomb. In that instant she understood. The house was never meant to let her go. It wasn't hunting her or trying to trap her, it had already done so long ago. The door is always the last thing we open. But some doors, once opened, are never meant to be closed again. Some doors should never be opened. Some secrets are better left untouched. But now it's too late. Sarah opened the door, and what followed her was something far worse than anyone could have ever imagined. What do you think happened to Sarah? Is she lost forever, trapped in that dark reflection? Or is something far more dreadful waiting for anyone who dares enter? Leave your theories below. What's your take on the house, the door, and Sarah's fate? And if you crave more chilling stories like this, don't forget to subscribe. New horrors await, and they won't let you forget them.